Dzień dobry, szanowni państwo.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Warsaw Stock Exchange and to the presentation of ORLEN's performance in the last quarter of 2024 and the whole year. Before we move on to the presentation, we would like to show you a short video. We are not a filmmaking company, but the video is still quite interesting because it shows how we transform the Polish economy. The video will show an offshore wind farm that ORLEN is constructing. Enjoy the video.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Good morning, everyone.
Witam na prezentacji wyników czwartego kwartału ubiegłego roku.
It's a pleasure to present to you the results for the last quarter of 2024. And I'm pleased to say that this was a very good quarter. In addition to financial performance and everything else that is of key importance for all the stakeholders, that quarter was very safe. TRR was twice as low as in the previous quarter, 0.68. This makes us proud and calm about the future of the company as a whole and everyone in the company. We all feel safe at work here. So this was a very good quarter, even though the macroeconomic situation was less favorable than in the previous quarter. We've done a few things that we are proud of, that the market has appreciated and that the shareholders have appreciated. First, the strategy. We presented it in the beginning of this quarter, but we completed the strategy in the previous quarter. The market was very enthusiastic. I wouldn't like to be overtly optimistic, but this was exactly the response from the market. Another very important thing that we completed took place on the 10th of December when we closed the Olefin 3 project. That was a very bad project for the company's current expenses and its future. Poorly prepared, poorly estimated project. We closed it down. We started a new project called New Chemistry. We increased strategic and energy security of Poland, prospecting for new gas deposits in Poland and in Norway. Also in retail, where we interact with the largest number of customers. We've sold the greatest volume in history, and we increased our renewable assets to 1.5 gigawatts. With good operating performance, we delivered a high net result. I'm not a fan of net result because it doesn't show you much. It is affected by many write-offs, one-off events that do not reflect what actually happens. But if you notice, it was nearly 5 times as large as in the previous quarter. That's why we are talking about this. Then EBITDA LIFO, excluding one-offs and regulations, was also promising, especially when you take into account the lower margins. But Magda will tell you the details. Now, let me move on to the key developments of last year. Discovery of new gas deposits in Wielkopolska increases our energy security, and this is, well, the credit goes to our colleagues from Polish Oil and Gas Company. We are very grateful for that, and we will now move on to extract that gas. Same thing in Norway, 5 billion of barrels of oil, and another very important thing that demonstrates our determination to take more steps towards mergers. So the thing that we spoke about in the context of synergies, we created one upstream company that will group the organizational culture of all the companies in ORLEN Group. In this way, we will be able to reduce costs, increase performance, and improve Poland's energy security. Transformation projects. This is very important. You have just seen the video about the offshore wind farm. This is the beginning of Baltic Power that will become operational in 2026. Work is well underway, and I am certain that there will be no delays in this project. Thanks to the hard work of Energa operator and ORLEN's headquarters, we secured 7.5 billion zlotys from the National Recovery Plan for the improvements in the energy grid in central and northern Poland. This is very important because you cannot transform the country without a good power grid. We are also constructing gas-fired power plants in Grudziądz and Ostrołęka. They should be ready in the first half, hopefully in the first quarter of 2026. And we're working on 2 new projects, Grudziądz 2 and Gdańsk. We hope that these projects will be ready for presentation this year at the capacity auction market, either later this year or the standard auction in December. Now, corporate and environment. Our strategy and how that strategy was accepted in the market, and the new project, new chemistry that replaces olefins, and then Polska Press. That was an extremely failed investment that keeps delivering losses, and historically it's hundreds of millions of losses. But apart from finance, it damaged our reputation. ORLEN was included in the list of shame, a list managed by Norges Bank, a list of companies that may violate human rights. Thanks to our corporate changes, we were deleted off that list, and we are very proud of that, and we are happy, and we appreciate the staff of Polska Press that they've been working hard to achieve this. After a few years, we are back in a group of companies whose philosophy appreciates the issues of ESG. We are back in the UL Global Compact. This is where we wanted to be. We don't want to be in lists of shames. We want to be in the company of other organizations that are determined to promote new standards in taking care of the environment and the people and the communities we live in. And the financial manifestation of the changes in ORLEN, the first ever issue of bonds in the US, a very successful issue. Magda will give you the details, and let me thank Magda and congratulate her and her team. Przemek is not here, I'm afraid, but he was also very much involved. Kuba, you saw him travel from investor to investor, convincing them to invest in our bonds. And now the social aspect, we've spoken about this repeatedly, and this is very important. But in addition to the importance, we also changed our method of operation. Namely, we want our social efforts to be more community-driven. So we publish calls for proposals, and we encourage the community to submit proposals. We have a team of experts, including external experts, who evaluate those proposals, and we believe that this is more rational. In the Cultural ORLEN program, we address young people from smaller towns. Sports ORLEN was addressed at everyone in the country, and we saw a huge number of entrants from smaller towns and villages. We were proud to join Poland's biggest charity effort, the Grand Orchestra of Christmas Aid, where we supported healthcare for severely sick children. And the amount of money we contributed came from money earned selling coffee on our petrol stations. So we contributed the money together with our customers. We also paid 675 billion zlotys of taxes last year. So that's 10% of Poland's budgetary revenues. And we are proud that we and our customers so generously contribute to the security and wealth of Poland. And now, probably the single most important thing, I guess you've heard this already 1 hour ago. In our first conference, we promised to be open and quick in our communication, and this is our founding principle. When we presented our strategy, we said that we wanted to increase the base amount in the dividend, and we changed the way of calculating the extra dividend related to the free cash flow. So looking at last year's financial performance, we decided to propose to the general meeting to pay a record high dividend of 6 zloty. Last year it was 4.15, and the average for previous years was 3.24. So we share the profits with those who contributed to those profits. Our customers, our shareholders, and we hope that this tradition will continue in the years to come, the tradition of increasing the base amount. Magda will give you the details now. Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to have all of you here at our conference when we present the results for the last quarter of 2024 and summarize the whole year, which was a very good year in operating terms. Our operating performance was very good, and even though the performance was good, the macroeconomic and regulatory situation was not that easy. We've been communicating this throughout the year. In my first slide, if you look at the top part of this page, because there you can see that all the basic parameters that have a bearing on our performance was lower year on year, whether refining margin for gas prices or electricity prices, all of these parameters were lower than last year. We generated over 35 billion of EBITDA, LIFO-based EBITDA, and quite importantly, we had over 36 billion of cash flow from operations. So this confirms the value and quality of business EBITDA, and our new dividend policy is based on this cash flow. The group maintains its strong financial position as confirmed by Moody's and Fitch ratings. Net debt to EBITDA was low, 0.3, and throughout the year we focused on diversifying our financing sources. The CEO mentioned the bond issue in the US. Let me share some details. We secured $1.25 billion, but the interest among investors was 3 times higher. We had 300% of oversubscription, and the cost of securing these funds was very attractive for us. It was close to the interest rate on Polish treasury bonds. Also, the feedback that we received from the investors was very important. The investors spoke to us about their opinion on our strategy. They emphasized that the strategy seems coherent and seems reasonable and understandable. And that's why they trusted us. They want to finance this strategy in the next 10 years. And as we promised in our new dividend policy, we share the results, the fruit of our work with the shareholders. And as the CEO mentioned, we will propose 6 zloty per share in dividend. Throughout the year, all the segments of the group, except for petrochemicals, which is struggling with our difficult market situation, and upstream segment, which faced regulatory pressure last year. So all other segments made a great contribution to our performance. If you look at the right-hand side of the page, you will see a year-on-year comparison. And this comparison is not straightforward because macroeconomic situation had a negative impact of 16 billion. And if this impact continued into this year, the result would be more than 10 billion better. Year on year, we paid less money, we received less money for the frozen prices of gas and electricity. And thirdly, the aftermath of some capital transactions, the purchase of Polish oil and gas company, and the valuation of gas portfolio transaction. The difference in valuation here is as much as 7 billion. But more importantly, on the other side of the chart, you can see the effects of our efforts, our operational and sales efforts, rational management, and the skillful use of our diversified business model. All of this gave us higher margins and bigger volumes. Speaking about volumes, that's mostly the upstream segment, 3 billion, and more sales of gas, roughly 1 billion. And our gas and upstream segments, they generated more than 2/3 of our EBITDA. Quite importantly here, 2024 and 2023 are not easy to compare again. Here we show some results that are not purely operational. They are not related to how effectively we manage our assets. When we factor that in, our EBITDA goes up to over 36 billion, 4 billion higher than in 2023. The one-off events, I mentioned them already, that's a lower less money we received for frozen gas and electricity rates, and a lower valuation of our gas portfolios. Also, if you look at our capex and our obligations towards the state, we're obliged to rationally invest capital in our investments. So our capex in 2024, that's 32.4 billion, that's roughly 6 billion less than originally presented by the group. This is attributable both to savings and modifications of our project. Some low-cost projects were discontinued. Now, let me move on to the results in the fourth quarter. The chart at the top shows the contribution of each segment to the group's EBITDA. So that's more than 12 billion of LIFO EBITDA. So all the segments except for petrochemicals delivered solid performance, especially when you look at the macroeconomic situation. Refining, we have a global normalization of margins and no negative impact of windfall charges. Petrochemicals, as mentioned, the macroeconomic pressure continues, and also some costs related to restructuring and optimizing our assets. Energy, very good operating results and no negative impact of regulation. Retail, in all our markets we delivered very good operational results. Upstream, this shows you the potential of this segment, additionally increased by greater production volume in Norway. And in the last quarter of 2024, we did not suffer from negative regulatory impact. In gas, we sold more volume, as the CEO mentioned, and our margins normalize. They were exorbitantly high in the previous years. In 2024, they normalized, and You can also see the impact of some accounting transactions and hedging on our LNG supplies portfolio. Now let me walk you through the results of each segment. Let's start with refining. As always, the macroeconomic situation was more challenging, and we communicated this to you throughout the year. In the fourth quarter alone, the refining margin went down by nearly 30%. So in addition to the general normalization of margins, we also had the effect of additional capacity in Nigeria, which translated into more product supply in Europe. Volumes went down by 9%, but despite that, we still had a positive impact of our volumes. This is quite interesting because it reflects a change in the sales structure. We sold 0.4 million tons more of own product, and we sold less commodities or merchandise than in 2023, which reflects our aggressive sales strategy in the last 2 quarters of 2023. On our own products, we cashed a full production and commercial margin. When we sell merchandise, it's only the commercial margin. We fully use our capacity, and this capacity increased in Poland and the Czech Republic. In Lithuania, it was somewhat lower due to some maintenance downtime and adverse weather that affected oil deliveries. Positive effect also came from sales margins and another part of compensation paid by insurance companies for one of the projects where we suffered a downtime, and also we did not have to pay the windfall charges in the amount of 1.5 billion. The next segment is petrochemicals, and here the constant message, macroeconomic market situation is extremely difficult. Even though our volumes went up, the results are still negative. We sold more in each of our products, but in addition to poor macroeconomic situation, we also took the effort to review and optimize our assets. We took some restructuring decisions related to our Spolana assets. We accounted for 0.4 billion as a restructuring provision. That's a one-off event related to hopefully future improvement in the performance of these assets. The next segment is energy. As I mentioned, in this segment, our operating performance was very positive.
A nawet mamy więcej, przepraszam, już. Wynik segmentu napędzała...
Here, the results were driven by the production and distribution in CCGTs that enjoyed lower contract prices of gas, and also heating assets, which is typical for the winter, the cold part of the year. Each of those delivered 0.5 billion lower network losses contributed to our performance. Despite adverse weather, our renewables also made a good contribution to the results. And thanks to our M&A operations in renewables and our own projects, we increased the installed power up to 1.5 gigawatts. In addition, this segment did not suffer from the write-downs of the windfall charges, so 0.4 billion less than last year. In retail, we had very good operating results in all our markets. More petrol stations, mostly by acquisition of stations in Austria and Hungary. Now we concentrate not only on increasing the number of stations, but we want to increase the value of the segment as a whole. So the growing number of stations goes line in line with the growing number of outlets where we sell non-petrol products. We also increase the number of alternative fueling stations. The biggest positive contribution came from higher margins, both on fuels and non-fuels. And let me mention the effect of normalizing the margins in Poland. In the last quarter of 2023, those margins were unusually low. You remember this mysteriously low level of prices in 2023, whereas in 2024 the margins went up to normal. The other important things here were the stronger Polish currency and greater operating cost of our network. Now the upstream segment. This segment was driven by volume, 17% growth in hydrocarbons. It's mostly attributable to acquisition of Norwegian assets, where we increased our production by 31.5 kBOE per day. When we compare the last quarter of 2024 to 2023, we did not pay the windfall tax in 2024, whereas in 2023 we paid 3.5 billion on that account. But throughout the whole year, the 2 years were comparable. However, in 2024, it was posted in the first quarter mostly. Other factors include growing gas prices in the area of 9% year on year. This was mitigated by a greater stronger zloty versus the dollar and the Norwegian crown. The production in the Norwegian shelf, as the CEO mentioned, is very high. It's over 215,000 BOE per day, which is attributable to very good production performance in the Norwegian shelf. After planned downtime in the third quarter, our production went up. Despite one of the incidents we had at one of our platforms, luckily no one was injured during that incident, and because our production assets are diversified, we managed to nearly hit the record levels from the first quarter. The next segment is gas. Here we had a greater increase in sales volume because of greater consumption in the industrial sector and among consumers. The total growth was 5% in the quarter and 2% in the year. As a result, our distribution volume was also greater by 10%. And in these results, you can see that the spread between the purchase price and sales price in forward transactions is narrower, which has a negative effect on our margins. The lower results in this segment is also attributable to the uncomparability of 2023 and 2024. In the last quarter of 2023, we additionally posted 7.5 billion on discontinued hedge accounting related to LNG supplies. Now let's look at our investments.
Na 2025 rok zaplanowaliśmy nakłady inwestycyjne.
Our capex for 2025 is planned at a level of over 35 billion.
4 miliardy, blisko 26 miliardów przeznaczymy na
26 billion of that will be spent on development in our three major production segments, that's upstream and supply, energy and downstream. The largest project in upstream and supply will include exploration and production in Norway, Yggdrasil, Tommeliten Alpha and Fenris. The gas that we will extract there will be sent to Poland through Baltic Pipe. In energy, the most important projects include state-of-the-art CCGTs in Ostrołęka and Grudziądz and PV farms that will provide electricity for households in Poland. We want to expand and modernize the power grid, 7.5 billion of subsidies from the National Recovery Plan. In the downstream sector, new installations in our refining plants and a new chemistry project in our petrol stations. We want to increase the number of outlets for non-fuels and alternative fuels as well. 2/3 of our investments will take place in Poland. Outside Poland, we will also deliver projects that will improve Poland's and the region's security. As I mentioned earlier, here you can see yet another piece of evidence showing to you that we will finance more and more of our investments through financial leasing. And next year, that figure will go up to 3.6 billion. So that's it from me when it comes to the presentation of the results for the last quarter and the whole year of 2024. This was a challenging year with a challenging regulatory and macroeconomic environment, but we have reasons to believe that we have done a good job. Thank you very much, and now we will be happy to take your questions.
Dziękujemy bardzo za prezentację.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Ja tradycyjnie się przedstawię.
Now we need a quick technical break. And in the meantime, let me comment on what the CEO said.
Z mojej perspektywy czystą przyjemnością była współpraca z zespołem Jarka Goncarza, Departamentu Skarbu.
When we worked on the bond issue, I was happy to cooperate with Mr. Jacek Goncarz from the Treasury Department. So, we are happy that you joined us, and we will be even more happy to take your questions.
Także chcielibyśmy dać pierwszeństwo państwu, którzy przyjęliście zaproszenie.
Those of you who are here with us on site will have a priority. Obviously, this conference is also streamed online.
Jeżeli to możliwe, ograniczyć się do jednego pytania.
If possible, please ask one question at a time.
Mateusz przekaże państwu mikrofon.
Mateusz here will give you the mic.
Zapraszam. Na wstępie prosiłbym o przedstawienie się.
So please introduce yourself
redakcji.
And
Dzień dobry, moje nazwisko Jacek Ozdowski.
good morning, Jacek Ozdowski. Let me congratulate you on your performance and the greater dividend. I'm glad that you're taking care of your shareholders. I have a question about how will you be taking care of the shareholders of Energa? You are the majority shareholder in Energa. You haven't mentioned that in the presentation, and we've been asking these questions for months without an answer so far. Unfortunately, the interpreter cannot hear any questions that are asked without the microphone.
Ja chciałbym tylko zwrócić uwagę, to jest konferencja poświęcona wynikom...
This conference is dedicated to ORLEN and its results.
Chce pan przyjąć, panie prezesie, zmęczonych już akcjonariuszy spółki Energa.
Bardzo dziękuję, że panowie jesteście z nami.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here with us, and we're happy that you identify with Energa Group, as we do. First of all, we complied with what the court asked us, so we cancelled our application for delisting. Secondly, the efforts we have been taking in relation to Energa have been efficient. If you look at the stock prices, the stock is performing really well. It went up by 60% since April last year, and that's good news for all of us. Energa shares are more and more valuable, and Energa's role in Poland's energy system is growing. Also, Energa's role in our strategy and day-to-day operation is increasingly important as well. Thanks to the hard work of people from Energa Operator and ORLEN, we secured 7.5 billion zloty from the National Recovery Plan, which will surely contribute to Energa's performance, and I'm sure we will have reasons to celebrate.
To jest trudne słowo.
We are now trying to operationalize our strategy for ORLEN. So we will do it piece by piece, company by company. And we will publicly present these partial strategies. And we will, of course, do that for Energa, because Energa is a listed company, and I'm sure that this will be the right time and venue to answer your questions. Now, let me just say that we complied with a court verdict. We can't do more, but now we're just taking care of the value of the company. Okay, so traditionally we had this question, and hopefully the next question will be related to ORLEN. Wojciech Jakubik, Energy Drink podcast. I want to ask about three things. The arbitration proceedings with Gazprom, what's the progress there? Secondly, what are the outlooks for further investments in the US? Mr. President mentioned midstream and global energy. And thirdly, one thing that I mentioned, and some Western media outlets also did, there have been mentions of NATO fuel infrastructure being built in Poland. ORLEN, as a listed company, could be part of it. Could you comment on it somehow? Thank you. Let's start with Venture Global, because this is quite fresh. fresh news. Venture Global told us that on the 23rd of April, first LNG supplies will come to Poland. So we hope that this is when we will start normalizing our relationship. Arbitration procedure should start later this year, but we're looking forward to April, because this will show us whether the port actually works. Midstream, we are looking carefully at midstream in the US. We are monitoring the situation. We're negotiating. And this careful observation is caused by the geopolitical situation and the things that happened in the US after the elections and in the wake of what Mr. President Trump is saying now. So we will be looking at what's going to happen in the US. In 2 weeks from now, there is this big global conference in Houston. We will attend that conference, obviously. Now, Gazprom, I looked at my colleague, and recently we received the first instance verdict that actually turns down our application. So we are analyzing the next steps. What was your last question? ORLEN's participation in building NATO's fuel infrastructure in Poland. Well, all I can say is that, yes, we are involved.
Mateusz?
Dobrze. Dzień dobry, Dariusz Nawrot, Nobel Securities.
Good morning, Dariusz Nawrot, Noble Securities. Could you tell us more about the negotiations about polyolefins of Azoty, and will there be a final decision regarding your participation by the end of this quarter? Well, for quite a few months now, we've been talking to our colleagues from Azoty and about the assets in Police. In December, we signed a stabilizing agreement involving all the stakeholders in the project, and in that stabilizing agreement we agreed that until the end of March we will analyze all the transactional aspects of that asset. We need to be sure that this asset will be a strategic fit with us and it will deliver value. If it does, then we will consider the terms on which we could take over. Our due diligence teams work day in, day out. We regularly talk to all the financing and supporting parties. So I hope that soon we will be able to give you some more details.
Good morning.
Łukasz Stępniak, Wiadomości Handlowe. You mentioned in the beginning that you are happy with your performance in retail in the last quarter of 2024. I have a question about the forecast for 2025. What could be the scenario in the first and the second half of this year? What will be the consumer modes? Well, we we replaced our retail team as a whole, and now we have very experienced, highly experienced people from all over Europe, including Spain, and we hope that their involvement and skills and competence will have a positive impact on our developments in retail. When we presented the strategy, we emphasized that this is a very important pillar of our operations, and this is how we consider retail. This is one of the 4 guarantees of our success. And importantly, when we speak about retail, we think about certain cohesion between our petrol stations and the gas we deliver to consumers. Mentally speaking, this becomes one. Operationally, not so much yet. We need to move on to the executive stage, and Energa-Obrót will have to play a role here. So the role of retail will be increasingly high and increasingly visible in the company's results. We do not think that there will be any serious obstacles to the development of retail, and I hope that this year should be even better than last year. Good morning, Andrzej Kubik, Gazeta Wyborcza. I have two questions. First, yesterday, BP published a radical change in its strategy, so less spendings on renewables and more capex into oil and gas. So this is the first European company that speaks about this openly. Do you think you will also need to update your strategy and pay more attention to traditional fossil fuels? Because it seems that the world is making a U-turn, and you will find out more in Houston, I'm sure. Another thing, in June, the agreement between Unipetrol and Rosneft comes to an end. Have you been thinking of a long-term agreement for Unipetrol? Because this seems to be the only long-term contract that is about to expire. Thank you very much. Yesterday, there were two important developments in our business. First, the BP report that you mentioned, and the other, in Antwerpen, there was a meeting of the European commissioners with Ursula von der Leyen, who presented to us, the business, and our representative, a new approach to the EU's industry and energy policy. I can't tell you much more than you can read in the press. But after I spoke to my colleague who was there, I know that there will be a certain shift, a new approach in energy policy. There will be more support for businesses, support from a new bank that will be created. So these are very important developments. In some way, to some extent, we are actually one step ahead of BP, because in our strategy we mentioned our transition period up until 2050, when we want to phase out fossil fuels. So in this transition period, we want to pay more attention to natural gas, and we see natural gas as the key pillar of Poland's energy transformation. We keep monitoring what's going on globally, and we address this in our strategy. Of course, we will keep monitoring what's going on, but we still consider natural gas to be one of the foundations of our company and Poland's security. In June, Rosneft contract expires, and we want to use a new pipeline going through Slovakia, and this pipeline will fill the gap caused by the end of the Rosneft contract. We're talking to potential new suppliers. No decisions taken yet.
Dzień dobry, Rafał Zasuń, portal Wysokie Napięcie.pl. Mam dwa pytania.
Good morning, Rafał Zaszyk, wysokienapięcie.pl. I have two questions. One is about obligatory natural gas stocks, reserves. What's your perspective on these requirements and the possible flexibility in these requirements? And second question, how are you preparing for the offshore wind auctions for the next year? The legislative paperwork has accelerated recently. Let me take this second question first, because it's easier. Yes, we are preparing carefully. Right now we are building our first offshore wind farm. We are monitoring the situation. We're not yet choosing our partner. And as regards the first question, I was busy yesterday doing other things, so I can't answer that question, but I will get back to you later.
Maciej Martewicz, Bloomberg.
Maciej Martewicz from Bloomberg. I have a question about Gazprom.
Sporów.
And there are a lot of disputes between ORLEN and Gazprom. You mentioned that one of your complaints was turned down.
Sporów to się wydarzyło.
So which specific complaint was that? Could we answer to you in writing later today? Because yes, indeed, we have more than one dispute, and I wouldn't like to say something that's not true. Let me help you out. We updated the memo regarding conditional obligations, and all our disputes with Gazprom are described in detail, so you can look it up. Marek Strzelecki, Reuters. I have a question about what's going to happen tomorrow, the deal between the US and Ukraine regarding the minerals extraction. Is it potentially good for ORLEN, or is it potentially adverse when it comes to your plans in Ukraine? Well, frankly speaking, at this stage we do not know. But today, after the press conference, we meet with Ukernafta. We have people who are in charge of the retail segment and the whole company and the upstream segment. So we are about to start operation in our old mining fields, very close to the Polish border. So we are monitoring that market. In some ways, it is similar to the Polish market. We still have our equipment there. We have our licenses there. So if the war situation ends, then we will be very much interested in developing our upstream and retail businesses. We have been present in Ukraine for many years, both as ORLEN and ORLEN Lietuva, especially ORLEN Lietuva, the Lithuanian company, or a good brand there. Ventus is one of the brands that's the petrol, 95 petrol, and Ukrainian clients like it. That's a valuable market, brand, more valuable than others. So we are very hopeful about Ukraine as a market.
Dzień dobry, Adam Kosieracki z WNP.pl.
Adam Kosieracki, WNP.pl. Could you comment on what Vice President Witold Literacki said on the 3rd of February? He commented on Fit for 55. He said that ORLEN was hoping for a revision of that package. And yesterday we were shown the details of the Clean Industry Deal published by the EC. So as of today, what is the scale of these changes and the revision of Fit for 55? In general, what do you think about the new direction on zero emission.
Witek na konferencji waszej pewnie mówił o naszym manifestie.
I think that our Vice President was commenting on our manifesto, where we asked for a redefinition of approach to climate change.
Wsparcie finansowego tych zmian.
We asked for financial support for these efforts, and we are happy that this support was promised yesterday. And more attention must be paid to country-specific obligations, such as ETS or RETT. Each country has its historical legacy. So Poland, with its hard coal legacy, finds it more difficult to automatically shift from coal to renewables.
Ja myślę, że
That's why we are looking at gas.
że tyle się dzieje,
And I think that
że dzisiaj takie jednostkowe mówienie o tym, co
If
sądzimy o tym, co się
we,
wydarzyło wczoraj, byłoby nadmiernym optymizmem, pesymizmem albo było nieuzasadnione.
it's too early to comment on what happened yesterday. Maybe in a few months from now we will meet again and we can speak about this. We will understand better what happened yesterday in Antwerpen, because yesterday we were hoping for a new approach to ETS2. It wasn't mentioned explicitly. Maybe it will be mentioned later on. So we are still monitoring, analyzing things. Perhaps in 2 or 3 months from now we can come back to your question.
Nie słyszę?
Halo, halo?
Tak.
Dzień dobry, Dominik Brodacki,
Polityka Insight. I have 3 quick questions. First, would you reconfirm that more details on new chemistry will be available later this year? And is there any progress in your conversations with other stakeholders? Question number 2, can you give us more details about CCGTs in Gdansk and Grudziądz, especially CAPEX and completion date and the planned capacity? And thirdly, when do you want to complete your ORLEN Synthos Dream Energy deal? New chemistry, yes. We still want to present the details later this year. We are talking to stakeholders. These are not easy conversations, but we didn't expect that they would be easy.
Spektakularnych wydarzeń w tym procesie nie ma.
No spectacular developments here, but it's perhaps too early.
Ze wszystkimi z nich.
But we are in regular contact with all the stakeholders. CCGTs.
Jeśli w tym roku przystąpimy do,
Mamy
nadzieję, że przystąpimy do aukcji rynku
we hope we will join the capacity auction this year. Well, that market is designed in such a way that those CCGTs that will enter the deal and win the auction, they will have to become operational in 2029. So that's our deadline. In Gdansk, we are more ambitious than originally planned. We want to increase the capacity to 560 megawatts. In Grudziądz 2, that's again 560 megawatts. We are already after the preliminary agreements. In Grudziądz, we expect quotation from contractors in May or June. We will be nearly ready to participate in the auction in June, July. And then Gdansk, we want to be ready for December. And if the cooperation with potential suppliers runs better than expected, then perhaps we will be ready to take part in this additional auction. But there are 2 dimensions here. Last year, when we spoke about Synthos, we hoped for building a certain corporate culture and signing an agreement that addresses this in a typical joint venture way. And that's done we signed the agreement on how we want to formally shape that JV. But in the meantime, we started talking about finance and the right to dispose of the patent rights. And this is a bit more intricate, more complicated. Negotiations are well underway. Last week, we agreed that we need to have an external contractor that will evaluate the rights that are on the table, and the things the part I discussed last year. Well, so the formation of the company, that's already done. Now we want to clarify the legal relationship between us and Synthos. And we want to address finance as well, which will probably take a few months because that's not something easy to appraise.
An
SMR like this does not operate anywhere in the world, so evaluating this will not be easy. Perhaps we will ask for 2 appraisals, but that's a very good question. Who's going to do it? I have a question that you have heard repeatedly over the last couple of months, and you will probably still keep hearing this. ORLEN Paczka, the Korea company. What's the status here? Perhaps you want to keep this project rather than sell it. Well, in principle, the parcel machines at our petrol stations, that's more than welcome. Yeah, that's a great fit with what we propose to our clients. So we want to keep those parcel machines at the pickup stations, but we don't want to manage this. So we are in the process of analyzing the way Ruch, the owner company, functions, and we hope to complete this process by the end of June. Looks like there are no more questions. And the questions we received online have already been answered. So this is when the formal part of this event ends. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for your active participation. Let me thank the management board for the presentation. And now let's enjoy the Polish donuts, because we have the Polish Donut Day today.